I think hit points suck in Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to break down 3 different things. Number 1, there's too many hit points. Number 2, what you can do about it if you agree with me. And number 3, what I'm currently doing in my weekly game. Get yourself a drink and stay a while.
Hey there, it's DM's off. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you know when we upload new videos.
All right, 3 points, 3 shots. Number 1. D&D has too many hit points. I started playing D&D back in the 1980s with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. The vanilla fantasy setting of Dungeons and Dragons was something that I was so very much attracted to. I wanted to be Conan the Barbarian, and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons gave me the opportunity to do that, vicariously speaking. But I noticed as we played the game more and more, as I climbed through the levels, it just got kind of ridiculous that by the time I was 13th level, I had 90 plus, maybe even over 100 hit points. It was insane. With something as awesome as going into a fantasy, and what messes that up the most is breaking the verisimilitude of the fantasy that you're in. When we have gobs and gobs of hit points, it just doesn't make any sense to me. There was a video that I watched not too long ago that talked of the old guard. It could have been Frank Metzer, it could have been Gary Gygax, somebody from the old school way of thinking, and they were discussing hit points. And they were kind of like, when you're at first level, you're kind of like a private in the Navy. And when you're in those latter levels, 15th, 16th, 17th, 20th, or whatever, you're like an admiral. Let's say you have a fighter at first level. They roll a d10 and roll a 3. They got 3 hit points plus their constitution. But an admiral that might be 16th level is going to have over 100 hit points on average. Now take those 2 people, the private and the admiral, take yourself a sword or a dagger and stab them right in the stomach. Let's just say we rolled 4 points of damage for each of them. The private dies. -1 hit points. The admiral miraculously survives, and he's got 90 plus hit points left. This doesn't make any sense. When I was introduced to like a toughness score opposition against your damage, like in Star Wars, the role-playing game from West End Games, also from games like Torg, and also Savage Worlds, it made a lot more sense to me. Like you would have like a wound, maybe a second wound, a mortal wound, then dead. So basically you could get hit 4 times and you're dead. That makes sense because you are supposed to be a hero, right? But I still liked hit points. It was easy to do. You take 5 points of damage, okay, I minus that, that's where I'm at. So because this idea between the private and the admiral just kind of doesn't make sense, a person is a person. There's going to be some people that will be able to withstand multiple injuries, multiple stab wounds, and survive depending on what medical attention they receive. But for the most part, if you stab someone in the stomach or in the intestines or right in the heart, they're pretty much dead. So it doesn't matter how much studying or how many adventures that the admiral has been on. That person's probably going to die just as quickly from that stab wound as the private, generally speaking. Whenever I talk about hit points, there's always someone that talks about
hit points have been explained that it's a combination of luck and experience and the fate of the gods, but it's not necessarily about how much damage you can take from a blade or a spell blast.
To me, that's fucking stupid. Because as dungeon masters or game masters, we are trying to explain what's happening when you've gotten hit. 2 points of damage. The arrow grazes you on the shoulder or the outside of the leg. You took 10 points of damage. Oh, you got sliced across the chest. The fireball explodes right in front of you and everything you're wearing is burning. We're using this sort of description, but it's not adding up with the hit points that we have. And then let's not even bring up the slogginess that happens when you get into a battle that takes up 4 hours of your game time. What a burden. So in my mind, having too many hit points is too much of a problem for me personally. It doesn't flow with how I run my games and how I want to describe things. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2, cheers. What can we do about it? I think the best bet for those of you that are still playing 5th edition is to pick up 5e Hardcore from Runehammer Games. And it's got a wonderful section on basically lowering hit points overall. Within 5e Hardcore, the hit dice of the enemies is 10 times the CR rating. Done. Basically, for the players, you don't add your constitution modifier and you roll whatever you get, you get. If at first level you roll that 1d10, you get 1, you have 1 hit point, that's that. That cleans it up immensely, but it's still not good enough for me. All right, number 3. What am I personally doing right now in my home game? What I've done for my homebrew game is that I've taken hit dice and hit points away from the classes. We've attached hit points to the races in the game. If you're a first level human, you start with 20 hit points. If you're a gnome, you start with 15 hit points. If you are a Jotun, which is my game's title for Goliaths, essentially, then you start with 25 hit points. Doesn't matter if you're a bard or a barbarian or a wizard or fighter. Your race determines your hit points. As you go up in levels, you gain 1 hit point per level. Only the martial classes have a chance to get up to 2 hit points per level. Basically, they're flipping a coin. Heads it's 1, tails it's 2. So a human wizard starts off at first level with 20 hit points. By the time they reach 10th level, they have 29 hit points. If a martial class is lucky enough, and they roll a 2 for each of the levels, they could have up to 38 hit points at 10th level. For right now, as I'm writing up the stats for my own monsters, I'm using Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy for all the monster hit points, and they seem about right. For instance, a red dragon in this game has 45 hit points. So the characters in the game aren't still going up against 300, 400, 500 hit points worth of monster. Everything is scaled down. Not only does this help with the immersion into the game for me personally, but it also makes for combats that don't last forever. Now, if you're playing a game like 5e, you're going to have to scale everything down. So I'm personally doing this with my own homebrew D&D, but if you're using 5e stats and all that, a lot of the damage needs to come down. Like for Fireball, Wall of Fire, and all of these crazy spells, and also the amount of attacks per round that a martial class would get. But I'm going to leave all that for another video. So what do you think? Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments. Hey, help us out by liking this video and leaving a comment and even subscribing. Really appreciate all the support for Agranak Studios. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.
All right, do this and do that and do this and do that. And watch this video.